Hey everyone in the VC, I just can't seem to stop today. This will be video number 5. I've just been in the mood to make videos and having fun doing it, I guess, especially doing Paul McCartney solo reviews. So I put up 3 reviews earlier today of McCartney albums, and I put up one video talking about some of my favorite albums in 1981, and been doing this, reviewing the solo Beatle albums in order of release, starting with Paul, and I will move on to John, George, and Ringo once I get through all the 800 Paul albums. And so, yeah, I've had fun doing this. I think I'm kind of looking forward to with Paul, especially, is once I get past the well-known albums of the 70s and early 80s and get into the later 80s and 90s and 2000s albums that aren't as well known. That's going to be kind of fun to do, I think, because you don't usually see those talked about or reviewed as much. But I'm having fun talking about the well-known albums too. And so, going in order of release, we come to March 31st, 1978, and the release of London Town. Hit number 1 in America, this album did. I'm sorry, hit number 2 in America and hit number 4 in England. This is a album that I'll always remember because this is the first Beatles solo album that I went out and bought when it was first released. I had bought this, I don't know the day it was released, but might have been the day. I remember where I bought it, the store and everything. But I bought it, in the first few days of its release at least. Had several other solo Beatle albums by this point. I was um, just in 8th grade there and waiting for May and summer vacation when this came out, so it would have been 14. Several other solo Beatles albums, but I'd bought them after the fact of them being released, things like Ram and All Things Must Pass and so forth, that I'd bought a year or more after they'd been released. So this is the first one that I actually bought up on release. This is that copy that I bought back in 1978 at Sound Warehouse over on Berry Street. It's a little worse for the wear, and still got the poster in it that was once upon a time hung for years in my bedroom in my house where I grew up. I don't live there anymore. And here's the inside sleeve. Like the color bars, kind of coincidence or funny that Elvis Costello's second album has that color bar at the edge of the album. On not that these two albums have anything to do with each other, but yeah. So always have a place in my heart for that, I guess. This album came out in kind of the height of the punk rock new wave movement in England, not so much in America, even though it's going on in America. It'd take America a little while to catch up to that stuff. But and in the midst of all that, Paul, instead of coming out with sort of a harder, raw album, comes out with a very sedate, laid back, mellow, relaxed album. But it's actually an album I always liked. I liked it then. I like it now. It's I have to be in the mood for this. When I am in the mood, it's just nothing else will do. And I always like this album quite a bit. And so let's see. Joe, me and Mr. Mayo was talking about the cover of this album the other day. By the way, he doesn't have any problem with it. I think he likes it, but he was talking about Rockboy 680 had done a review of this, and I haven't watched that yet, but I'm taking it he didn't like the cover. I think it's a good cover. I like that one side, it's London on a cold, gray, rainy day, which is how I imagine London is a lot of times. I've never been to England, so can't really say. But and then on the other side, you've got a sunny day in London, and there's the Tower Bridge, same shot, Tower Bridge behind them in both shots, and maybe that's part of it was recorded in London, so it's cold, gray, and rainy, and part of it was recorded in the Virgin Islands where it's sunny and so forth. Maybe, I don't know, but I think it's a good cover shot. I like the black and white, cloudy, overcast, rainy day shot. Maybe better than this one, but this one's pretty good too. So I have no problem with the cover. Uh, what else? Let's get into the songs, I guess. Side one opens with the title track, London Town. Really like that song. Musically, I think it's strong, strong song, and enjoy that. It's one of my favorites. The downfall is, and this is true for much of this album, is just the Paul can be so damn goofy sometimes, and just the lyrics, just the silly lyrics. I was accosted by a barker playing his flute, toot toot toot, and it's in here you have this really good song musically, and some of the lyrics, some of the imagery is really good, and it's just you get so frustrated with him sometimes. You just wish that he would. I mean, he's Paul McCartney, and I guess he thinks, you know, I mean, you're gonna have a big head if you're Paul McCartney, but you just wish sometimes that he would take the extra 5 minutes or a couple of hours a day to come back and look at his lyrics and sort of knock some of that goofy stuff out of there. And you know, I mean, wrote such great lyrics when he was with the Beatles, and he's written great lyrics solo. But there's just so many times when he does just the silly stuff like that. And what's the other part in here? He was accosted by a Roser with a wearing a pink balloon, and you're just like, oh, Paul, why? Why can't you just, you know, just give it a second glance, and the song's going to be better for it. And I mean, it's not like I'm anyone to talk because I certainly can't write a song that good. And he's Paul McCartney. He wrote, you know, She's a Woman. He wrote I'm Down. He wrote Hey Jude. He wrote, you know, Penny Lane. And that alone, he's got the legend to go sit in the corner and count his money and pick his nose the rest of his life or write whatever he does. But I mean, you just kind of wish he would try a little harder sometimes because, especially, I mean, sometimes he just has a song that's some songs that are just kind of silly and dumb from beginning to end. But here with London Town, it's a good song and it could have been a much better song. That's all I'm saying. But I do like it with the pink balloons and toot toot flute aside. I'm going to give that one a 7.5. We go to number two song on side one, which is Cafe on the Left Bank. Um, Guitar's all right in this song. I kind of like it. It's background music, really, but it's pretty good background music. And really, a lot of this album is sort of relaxing background music. A good album to put on a Sunday when you're reading the paper or, you know, doing stuff around the house. And I don't mean that background in a bad way. I mean in a good way. Um, but yeah, Cafe on the Left Bank, I give it a 6.5. It's a pretty good song. Number three song I'm carrying is I've heard it's about because Linda was pregnant at the time with James, that dynamo of personality, and so a song about Paul singing, I guess from her perspective, that she tells him she's going to have another baby and she's carrying a baby. And I've heard it's also not about that, so I don't know. But that's the way I always thought about it. And it kind of, it's a nice little song. I like it enough. I'm going to give it a 6. Kind of reminds me of the, what song? I Love Lucy. We're having a baby, my baby and me, or we're having a baby, Lucy and me. Ricky Ricardo singing. It doesn't sound like Ricky Ricardo, but it kind of reminds me of that song. Um, Fourth song, Backwards Traveler. It's a very Wings sounding song, which is strange to say, this being Wings and all, but it's just got that trademark Wings sound to it. I like it enough. It's short, 6.5 I'm going to give it. And then it blends into Cufflink, which is a instrumental that's a bit funky and upbeat, and it's an okay song. I'm going to give that a 5.75. We'll go on that. Forgot to write a number down, but it's okay for an instrumental. Number 6 song is Children, Children, which is Danny Lane sings. I think Paul wrote that one. Maybe Danny and Paul both wrote it. I forgot to check. Danny Lane sings it. It's very English. It's very Renaissance fair type old music, old English music, sort of Puff the Magic Dragon feel to it. If you like that kind of stuff, it's fine. I don't dislike it, but it's not something that really interests me. I'm going to give it a 3.5. It's just okay. Number 7 song, Girlfriend. Paul sings in a very high falsetto. This is a song that he wrote with Michael Jackson in mind. Michael Jackson, in fact, did go on and cover it the next year on Off the Wall, on his Off the Wall album. Um, it's again, it's something not really my cup of tea. I'll give it a 4. It's okay. Number 8, I've had enough. That closes out side 1, and it's a rocker, sorta. I give it a 6.5. It's a rocker that I wish would have been a little bit more of a rocker. I wish it would have had a little more oomph in it and a little more guitar and power and rawness. Especially this being the age of punk rock and so forth. I wish, yeah, I just wish there was more ramped up, more of a I'm down helter skelter, hey bulldog type of feel to it. It's a rocker, but it's kind of a tame rocker. But I like it, and I'm going to give that a 6.5. We go to side 2. First song is With a Little Luck, which was a #1 hit in America, and I forgot to write down what it did in England, but I guess it doesn't really matter. I think it was like number 4 or so in England. Um, Soft rock song, a lot of synthesizers, late 70s sound to it. I've always really loved that song, though. I'm going to give it a 9. It's one that I liked. It also reminds me, Middle Then and Now. My mom liked this song a lot, and she wasn't the rock and roll generation. She was born in 1925, so she was more the Frank Sinatra and stuff like that. By the time rock and roll came along in the 50s, she was already, 30 or whatever. But she did like a few songs here and there, and that was one that she always liked quite a bit. And I remember her talking about how she liked that when this was all over the radio back then. And I had this album, and she wanted me to play it every once in a while to hear that song. And but I always liked it too. So yeah, I give that a 9. And so what do we got? Number 2 is Famous Groupies on side 2. Paul doing a lot of different voices like he does in a lot of songs. Uncle Albert and Mr. Bellamy, and he likes to do the funny voices and change the different voices, kind of a carnival barker at sometimes, and just different voices at different times. Just flat out really dumb, stupid lyrics in this song. Another one where I don't know that he could have saved this if he would have given it a second look lyric wise. But it's upbeat and it's fun and it's goofy enough that I'll give it a 6.5, a 6.75 because I just sort of try to ignore the painful, embarrassing lyrics on this one and just enjoy the music. Deliver Your Children is next, and that's another song sung by Danny Lane. Really good one. I really like this. This is catchy, it's fun, it's upbeat, it's good singing by Danny Lane. I think him and Paul both wrote this. I think he wrote most of it, and Paul sort of helped him finish it off. Lyrics are pretty okay on there until the end when he starts talking about how he can tell people by the color of their paint, and if you want good eggs, you got to feed the hen. Gets a little silly, but up to that point, the lyrics are serviceable, and 6.5 for that one if I didn't already say. Uh, Now, With a Little Luck, probably my favorite song on this album. Come to my second favorite song on this album, Name and Address. Sounds great. Paul doing his sounds like a old Sun Records recording from 1955. Paul's doing his sort of Elvis Carl Perkins and the echo and the bass and the reverb and all that. I love how the song just sort of ends. It just sort of stumbles to an end and just and we're done. Sort of like some of the songs on London Calling by the Clash do that. They just sort of blow and go and then just fall apart and stumble around and then just end. I like that. So 8.5 for Name and Address. I really like that song. Uh, Number 5 song, Don't Let It Bring You Down, is oddly enough, the recorder, I think it's a recorder, not a flute, and the first line sort of reminds me of We Three Kings of Orient Are, the Christmas Carol, uh, a little bit. And other than that, I don't know much else to say about that song. I don't love the song, but I sort of grudgingly like it. I'll give it a 6. It's just an okay song. It, one that don't really remember how it goes until I play the album every once in a while, and then I'm like, oh yeah, okay, that song. But memory fades pretty quick on that. It's just not a very memorable song. In other words, album ends with Morse. I always said Mort, but it's Morse Moose and the Gray Goose. Um, just a weird and silly and sort of dumb and fun song, all in equal measure. Goofy lyrics again. I don't know what he's going on about. Something about submarines and boats and airplanes, or I don't know what he's talking about. It's kind of weird, but it's kind of fun too. I give it a 6. And yeah, so also around this time he had Mulligan Tire 45 that came out, which was the biggest selling single in England at that time. The previous record holder was She Loves You by some band called Beatles, and so Mulligan Tire was the biggest selling single in England. That was eclipsed later by Band Aid, and then I think later that was eclipsed by the really lame Elton John song that he did when Anna died, the Goodbye English Rose or whatever that thing was called. Um, and Mulligan Tire did nothing I remember I bought the 45. I remember getting that at Murphy's in Seminary South shopping mall, but did nothing in America because I guess Americans don't know what moles or where Kintyre or any of that is. But kind of wish that would have been on here because I always kind of like that song. I think it's a song that a lot of people in England are sick to death of because it's one of those songs that's been played a bazillion times over there. I don't know that I've heard it on American radio more than maybe 3 or 4 times, but I think I heard it on the Beatles XM channel maybe once, and I think I heard it a time or two back in '77 because this is a '78 album. I think Mole came out in late '77 if I'm not mistaken. Overall, I'm gonna give this album uh, go 7.75. It's not one of my favorites of his, but I do like it a lot, and it is one of those, like I said, I've got to be in the mood for. But I do get in the mood for it several times a year, and so it's not the one that I usually reach for first when I want to listen to some Paul McCartney. But when I want this album, nothing else will do. And so yeah, 7.75. It's a pretty solid effort. I think the critical reaction at the time was mixed, but mainly trending more negative than positive. But I think it's one that's a lot of people thought was kind of a wimpy album, and it is a wimpy album in a lot of ways, but mostly in a good way, I think. And it's one that if you'd written it off before, might be worth a revisit just to give it a shot to see how you feel about it 40 years on. Um, anyway, it's a good one. So we will be back with Back to the Egg, and probably not tonight though. But maybe next week I'll do another batch of these. It's been fun to do, and I hope someone's watching this and enjoying them. But anyway, if either way, hope you all have a good weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.